Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Ishwaro Guratmeti Murti Beda Vibhagine Vyomavda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatoshmaham Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Okay, so we have began last week, the last chapter, conclusion. So chapter 22, in which Parasurama asked Dattatreya for more details on how the ghost, the spirit, how he was enlightened by Hemangada. So tell me the details of how it did happen. And then we have seen several verses which took us to the subject of different classes of Jnanis, because the Parasurama, the Dattatreya, was presenting again the dialogue, the final dialogue between the two, the sage, the prince, who was a Jnani, and the spirit, the ghost, in which the ghost was challenged him. So how can you be such a sage and still do what you do? I mean, you are here hunting. So explain what does it make one a Jnani, and so on. And that brought us into the conversation regarding karma, in which way Jnana burns all the karma so that one appears to be doing things, but it's not really doing things. And if there is inaction, we see inaction, in which way that apparent action is going to impact the mind of the Jnani. So these very subtle discussions about action and inaction, it's a nice, it's a beautiful theme, subject. And we're going to explore a bit the concept of prarabdha. So at the end, if one does have Jnani, the fire of self-knowledge was supposed to burn all karma. So does it really burn all karma? Well, there are some people who say, no, there is still some prarabdha for the Jnanis. The prarabdha is going to unfold, and it's going to somehow affect the mind, the body-mind of the Jnani as it unfolds. It's unfold from past agamis and sanchitas, suspended karma that somehow fructifies. And then, so we're going to look at it from the perspective of Dattatreya, explaining whether there is really sanchita or not. And as it seems, it will depend again on the category of the Jnani. For some Jnani, there may be no prarabdha. For some Jnani, maybe still some prarabdha. My take, generally speaking, is the prarabdha is going to affect the body, the body-mind to a certain degree, but it's not going to affect to the extent that one is a perfect Jnani, so as to speak. The knowledge is so clear and firm, and the mind is so convinced and pure that whatsoever happens to the body mind is not going to be experienced really, as a suffering, let's say, So we have the situation of Jesus on the cross, I mean, he's considered one of the avatars, and he's there, and the adversity is extreme, so he's being nailed into the cross. And for a moment, he seemed to suffer a little bit and say, what's wrong here? Why I'm going through all this suffering? So I'm more I lean towards understanding the human nature of the jiva, you understand? So it never goes away completely, to my understanding. What has to go away as complete as possible is the animal nature of the jiva, because we are all born with this animal nature, of surviving, and then sexual pleasures and food and all those things that somehow are involved with surviving and procreation and pleasures. So that animal nature is what needs to be transcended, so that we can live from our human nature and move as close as possible to what some refer to as our divine nature, But divine nature, we see a physical body, is always subject to some human nature and some animal nature from time to time. You understand? So it is what it is. It is what it is. But the degree by which one does not experience this animal nature and human nature too often, very shallow, very, rarely. So that defines a better or a better established or more pure and clear Jnani. Now, does that make sense? Oh, Prince, how can there be any residual of past karma in a Jnani? Does not Jnani burn away all karma as fire does a heap of camphor? Then Hemangada replied, listen, Brahmin, Brahmin, he was before a ghost. Before was a Brahmin, became a ghost, and now he's back into his Brahmin body form. And then he says the three kinds of karmas are the prarabdha, which are mature, fructifying karma, pending agami, and sanchita in store. These three are common to all, not excluding the Jnani. So all the Jnani as well is subject to karma. And the first of these alone remains for the Jnani, and the other two are burned away. And then here he presents again, he reinforces, he's in agreement with the statement that there is only prarabdha for the Jnani. Karma matures by the agency of time. This is beautiful. Time is going to fructify or mature karma. Such is the divine law, causality, this very complex law in which a cause becomes an effect, which the effect becomes a cause, and every cause and effect cyclically impacting everything and bringing about different timelines. A lot of people like to put in terms of different timelines, the potentials, due to this interaction with all factors in the field, including my own actions, our own actions. So karma matures by the agency of time. Such is the divine law. When mature, it is bound to produce its fruits. The karma of the one who is active after self-realization is rendered ineffective by his wisdom. So now, the karma of the one who is active after self-realization is rendered ineffective by his wisdom. So he's putting the seeker of moksha, he's active in looking or searching for self-realization. his karma is already neutralized to a certain extent, because he's developing wisdom. Now, the wisdom, even the wisdom developed in that process, minimize that strong ignorance, which is the sense I am the thinker, the doer, and the experiencer of my prarabdha. So that sense of doership, ownership, is greatly diminished. So the karma is rendered more ineffective as he grows or she grows in wisdom. Karma already mature and now yielding results is called prarabdha. It's like an arrow already shot from a bow, which must run its course until its momentum is lost. So this analogy is wonderfully beautiful, and it says everything about prarabdha. So we cannot change the course of what was already brought into the field, into the Dharma field. But there are some other parabolas that says that even the prarabdha can be changed if one is so devoted to the Lord. We have seen some of these beautiful stories. But generally speaking, what is in the language of Ramji, whatsoever is in the pipeline is going to come at the end. You understand? So it's already there. So it's just a question how we're going to take that kind of karma. Prarabdha must bear fruits and cannot be checked by realization of the self, but there is no enjoyment of its fruits by the realized sage. So now he presents a note here that says that the fruits, the prarabdha, are unavoidable. It's going to fructify, and it cannot be changed by self-realization, but there is no enjoyment. So he presents the prarabdha of someone who got to self-realization as punya. He's talking about enjoyment rather than psychological suffering. But from the general angle, we imagine the prarabdha. There is no prarabdha, meaning to say there is no papa, really. But when we say there is no papa, we understand that papa punya goes together. So if there is no papa, there is no punya. If there is no punya, there is no papa. There is no identification whatsoever with one's prarabdha, one's life circumstance. To the extent that the mind relaxes, due to the certainty of self-knowledge that I am not the karta and I'm not the bhokta. I am pre-limitless consciousness witnessing through this intellect what is happening to the body-mind on its lower dimension of mind, emotions, feelings, sensations. So, but there is no enjoyment of its fruits by the realized, and there is no suffering of its fruits as well. So let's see if there will be more elaboration here, in which way there is no enjoyment and there is no suffering. So it's the same old concept of equanimity. So self-knowledge grows to produce a more and more solid and deeply rooted certainty that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. And that somehow not only cancels or protects us from great suffering, like the shield in the Bhagavad Gita that protects you from great suffering, but protects you from great happiness as well. And some people do not like that, you understand? And here he's presenting that he's not going to suffer, he's not going to enjoy the fruits of one's good efforts of the past. So equanimity is equanimity, So you are okay whether things are very favorable, and you're okay if things are unfavorable, because that's the meaning of equanimity. You accept things as an spectator watching a theater play or something like that. Environments are only a result of prarabdha, though they seem the same for all. Jnanis react differently according to their own states of realization. There we go. He says what's happening, life circumstance in one's environment are the result of one's karma, prarabdha karma. Karma is manifesting as life's circumstance in one's environment. They are the same for everybody. So the same crisis or difficult condition, the so-called Kali Yuga. So it's the same Kali Yuga, it's the same circumstances, the same challenge for everybody, but everyone is going to take it different from one another. No? So it will depend on the level of maturity, the level of balance, strength, mental, emotional strength, spiritual development. So, and then everyone is going to react to them differently. And here he's talking about the Jnanis. He says, according to their own states of self-realization. We know that Jnanis as well are going to react differently from the adversities being presented. And then here he's presenting something else. So before we think, oh, Jnani, so there will be a difference in how they react. So he's putting everybody in the same bag and says Jnanis will react, generally speaking, very, very poorly. But some Jnanis are going to react with more mental, emotional strength. Then due to devotion to God, mostly, you understand? Was to the trust in God. But even the Jnanis, the self-realized, are going to deal with this challenge differently as well, according to their maturity, the stage of self-realization. Pleasure and pain are apparent to the least among the sages, but do not have any mark on them as they do on the ignorant. Now he's compared the Jnani with the Jnani. He says that good circumstance, punya papa, pleasure and pain, they appear for both, including to the least qualified Jnani, the least among the sages. But they don't leave a great impression in their body-mind or in the mind as they do with the Jnanis. So now the Jnani is going to experience pleasure and pain, and they are going to leave big impressions. What are the vasanas but just mental, emotional impressions? And we develop these vasanas because our attraction and repulsion to punya papa, to better circumstance and worse circumstance. So impressions are only possible for as long as we are identified with our likes and dislikes. So these impressions are very strong on the ignorant because they are moved by their likes and dislikes, big time. So for the Jnanis, even the Jnanis on the least entry level, these impressions are not going to be created, because we are talking about Jnanis that deal with adversity, and these adversity leave no strong mark or impression in their mind, producing more or feeding into more attraction and repulsion, because self-knowledge neutralizes a lot of that. But still there is some impression that adversity may cause to the least among the sage, but much less than what it does with the Jnani. Pleasure and pain operate on the middle class of the sages as well in the same way. However, they react only indistinctively to their prarabdha, as a man in sleep does to a gentle breeze or to an insect creeping over him. Very nice analogy. Now he presents the sage of the middle class. So pleasure and pain is going to impact them, but it's not going to leave a strong mark or impression, okay? Because they reacted indistinctly to their prarabdha, more or less like a man in sleep does to a breeze. So you are sleeping and then there is a breeze. So you don't really react to that. Or how a man in sleep does react to an insect creeping over him. Yeah? So he's pointing out to the middle class as having a more profound immunization against prarabdha, punya papa, not only papa, but punya papa. Yeah? Pleasure and pain are again apparent to the highest among the sages. So even the best sages still are subject to pleasure and pain, who, however, look upon them as unreal, like a hair growing horn. So what makes that possible is such a profound, properly established conviction of self-knowledge that no matter how attractive a pleasure circumstance may be or painful circumstance may be, it's seen as unreal to the highly established Jnani, the best among the Jnanis, the highest among the Jnanis. So one is going to look at it with such dispassion, and that will leave no impression on his mind. This is the middle class. So the highest is going to look upon that with from the standpoint that none of this is real. So I am just consciousness, and within the scope of my conscious existence, there is this reflection. Just imagine the highest of the Jnanis having an objective view of pleasure and pain according to that his very body-mind, as objective as the pleasure and pain according to the person next to him or her. You understand? We are talking about that. So it's easier for us to see that either we see like somebody suffer, oh, it's okay, it's his karma, so hold in there, and you're going to be okay, you're going to exhaust some punya papa, and but then some are going to look at it with such an incredible dispassion that to some it may appear as if there is no compassion or sentiment in the mind of the highest among the sages, because it's only seen as unreal, and we can take some examples of a not very distant past from one of the Jnanis. We got in contact with such as Ramana Maharaj. I keep bringing Ramana Maharaj every time these examples are presented. The ignorant, on the other hand, anticipate pleasure and pain before the enjoyment. And not only that, they have an expectation, and they are anxious, expecting, and they start, getting some satisfaction only from the imagination that things are going to be good. But not only that, they like to recapitulate the good and the bad karmas. So they are going to keep remembering the enjoyment for some time, and this remembering is going to create a vasana for please, more, better, more intense, and then for the papa karmas, the pain, he's going to keep remembering, and in his mind or her mind thinking, oh, never again, how can I avoid this kind of circumstance again. So the mind is preoccupied, anticipating and desiring or fearing something that was painful. We can see that the mind of the Jnani is most of the time disturbed just from these mechanics of ignorance, of avidya, all the time expecting and anticipating, and anxiety and oh, it's going to be all right. Oh no, maybe not. So that is a great disturbance. And then here it's not talking about the frustration when those anticipations and expectations are not fulfilled, which brings more mental, emotional disturbance, And then when everything is over, there are strong impressions in there, and then the Jnani, the ignorant, is going to keep remembering and producing an even more profound impression of those recent past experience. This is the whole mechanics here. We are moved by our likes and dislikes. They leave impressions. Impressions may be superficial or strong, and these impressions are going to produce a desire or fear for more or less of those experience. So he goes back from the ignorant to the Jnanis of the lowest order, also enjoy pleasure and pain, like the Jnani, the ignorant, but their remembrance of such experience is frequently broken up by intervals of realization. Thus, worldly experience do not leave a strong impression on the minds. So here we go. So the Jnani has nothing in his hands except the remembrance of good days and remembrance of bad days that needs to be avoided. Okay. So the Jnanis of the lowest order also will enjoy some pleasure and pain like the Jnani, but they are not going to remember and to keep recollecting those memories again and again as a mean to bring about some priya or moda, some satisfaction from the remembrance. Oh, it was so good, and much less thinking, oh my God, it was so bad. So the Jnani, it's going to, of the lowest, may be impacted by pleasure and pain, but they don't project a second layer of problems, mental problems, which is the interpretation, remembrancing, expectation, and oh my God, so how, it's not attractive anymore. So he may have an impact of pleasure and pain, but he does not do that kind of activity, which produce a second layer or reinforce ignorance big time. Why? Because between those moments of pleasure and pain, he rests. He goes back and he rests in one's self-realization. So you say, oh my God, at that moment, so I was a little bit caught up with this and that, but now no. Okay, I have my intervals in which I sit back and I don't feed into any memories in regards to pleasures and pains. I say, oh my God, this is all Maya. For a moment, I have lost my balance a little bit, but now I have these intervals of resting in the self as the self fully realized and unconcerned about past experience. Those worldly experience do not leave an impression on their mind. So these worldly experience are not going to further create impressions or create further impressions in one's mind, because I have self-knowledge to sit and to rest in that certainty. And that is going to neutralize this movement of trying to go back to those experiences which produce more and more deeply ingrained impressions in the mind. So far, so good? Yanis of the middle class, accustomed to control their minds by long continued austerities, keep their minds in check even while experiencing pleasure and pain. And thus their response to the world is as indistinct as that of a man in sleep, to a gentle breeze playing on him or an ant creeping over his body. So the middle class Jnani is so detached by his or her own mind due to a long process of discipline, of purification of the mind, objectifying the mind and controlling the mind so that the mind is not running around like a wild horse. So it has done so much discipline, and they keep their minds in check. So again, we have the disciplines. We have discrimination, dispassion, and discipline. The disciplines are going to keep the mind in check, even while the Jnani of the middle class is experience bad prarabdhas and extremely good prarabdhas, pleasure and pain, favorable and unfavorable. The mind is in check. Okay, so it's the benefits of self-knowledge is more at one's disposal. So self-knowledge is a knowledge that needs to be available at all times to protect the Jnani from the power, the deceiving power of Maya, So this Jnani of middle class has the mind in check, has an objective view of the mind, and if it is experiencing pleasure and pain, it is there, right there, is under control. He does not need to go through certain involvements or engagements with emotional conditions due to pleasure and pain to just around the corner to rest back into the self. No, he remains fully established in the self due to the purification and discipline which he was brought the mind in check at all circumstances. Therefore, their response to the world is as indistinct as that of a man in sleep. So again, the equanimity towards good and bad circumstance is even more solid. It's like it's all good, and it's so much so that it's close to not even relate it as unreal. Here it says, in this analogy, it's more like a man in sleep, not really aware of what's going on his around his body. No. So let's see the highest of the Jnanis. Jnanis of the highest order are left untouched, for they always remain as the burned skeleton of a cloth, remaining its old shape but useless. So this is another beautiful Vedantic analogy, metaphor. So the Jnani has not only an objective view of his body-mind and his experience of prarabdha, but his vision of the body-mind is similar to a body that was burned, to remain as something that has no power over him, So, and then the skeleton of a cloth, sometimes something close, but you still see the shape, but that shape is good for nothing. It's useless. Why? Because you burned the body with self-realization, although the body still remains, but it's useless. It's useless in the sense that the Jnani at this level does not need the body to produce punya papa, or punya in the case, He's just, he's a extraterrestrial that lives in this planet is still associated to a body. Just as a nectar is not really affected by the passions which he displays on the stage, so also this highest order of Jnani, always aware of his perfection, is not affected by the seeming pleasures and pains which he regards as mere illusion, like the horns of a hare. So again, here it says that this highest Jnani is like a nectar, which is never really affected by the drama which the body mind, by which the body mind is submit to, So an actor, he can even experience some passion, but it's absolute no identification. It's all a staged thing. So the same way this pure Jnani, he's so much aware of his perfection. Perfection is a beautiful word. So what is perfection? So Satchitananda, conscious existence. So this is our perfect nature. He's so much aware of his perfect nature that nothing affects him, no pleasure and no pains. They are seen as unreal. The ignorant are not aware of this perfect pure self. They see it always blemished, and hence they believe in the reality of objective knowledge. They are therefore affected by the pleasures and pains of life. So back to the Jnani. Jnani is the one who is not only, there are we could say two classes of Jnani. There is a Jnani that is fully identified with the body, to the extent that they have the concept that there is something such a pure, perfect self, within the human experience, as the nature of the Jiva-Atma. So this concept of there is a self does not come to one's mind. This is Jnani that is really, really Jnani, really under the spell of Maya. And then there is Jnani, ignorant, that somehow heard that there is something as the self, and the self is perfect and pure. But he's mixing up the self with the mind all the time. Understand? A confusion. Okay, I'm not the body, but I'm the mind. And then he's always going for objective knowledge, because he believes that the objective knowledge is going to solve the problem. Since he cannot really control his bodily experience, he trying to control his mental experience by gaining objective knowledge. The ignorant are not aware of pure self. They see it's always blemished, such as the mind. The mind is always impacted by experience. So they see the self, the pure, limitless, perfect self, as something that is constantly impacted by experience. Therefore, hence they believe in the reality of Maya, of samsara, objective world, in which he can get objective knowledge. And of course, the ignorance, they experience pleasure and pains. So the more ignorant, such as the first example of ignorance, suffers much more pleasures and pains. And the one who is already, living a spiritual life, trying to understand the teachings of Vedanta, has one's pleasures and pains greatly minimized. So as for the lowest order of Jnanis, these realize, as for the lowest order of Jnani, these realize the self on and off, and spells of ignorance overtake them whenever they are overcome by their predispositions. Interesting, huh? Then they look upon the body as the self and the world as real. They are often able to override the old vasanas tendency, and thus there is an ongoing struggle between wisdom and ignorance, each of them prevailing alternatively. This is a strong statement here, which somehow may contradict some other Vedantic statements. Those statements says that jnana, knowledge, self-knowledge, is one and the same to all. And in here it says that the lowest order of jnanis, they realize the self, but it's not firm, it's not present all the time, it's subject to forgetfulness. So, and then is the jnana the same for all the trees? So we can play around that and say yes or say no, because the jnana is the same, and the jnana is the same even on the intellectual level, which is the first step. Academic, jnana in respect to the true nature of the Jivatma is available as the first step, but it does not do much to help removing the psychological suffering. And then once this jnana is properly assimilated, and then it says that it appears as on and off, as spells of ignorance overtake them whenever they are overcome by their vasanas, tendencies, predispositions. So we don't need to really be too much fixated about these concepts, because they are so they are not precise. This is not mathematical or exact science or anything like that. Okay, so the jnani is going to get the jnana intellectually at the beginning, and then it's going to develop a clarity and a certainty. I am that self, I am that conscious existence of limitless nature. So this jnana is the same, okay? But so how about one's predispositions, aham bodhas me? So those predispositions, and I believe the world is still there to serve a certain purpose, to complete myself. So this beginningless ignorance is somehow remains. And the very lowest order of jnanis are often overtaken by these predispositions, you understand? And then it's said that they experience, what is it, the on and off? In the here, they realize themselves off and on. So it's the knowledge is clear, but then when the predispositions, vasanas, we are talking about vasanas based on self-ignorance, this universal cosmic vasana, which comes to the mind whenever the jnani is interacting with the field. So it appears that the jnana is there, but it's not effective in neutralizing that kind of cosmic ignorance, and then it appears as is on and off. So am I self-realized? Because sometimes I forget it, and I know this. I have been there, and it comes, and then one may get even confused. And when it's off, when the power of such predispositions, are stronger than one's knowledge, self-knowledge, they look upon the body as real and the world as real as well. So they superimpose the body-mind on the self, and they also attribute reality to the world, and then they live within the same spell of ignorance, like all jnanis, for a moment, which is reality is duality, the self, there is a self, and I believe the body mind is the self, and the world is real as well. So those are those moments or eclipse in which this ignorance surface again. And as I said, it can create confusion in the mind of the entry-level jnani. He says that they are often able to override the old tendencies. So you have to be, this is the stage that one has to be in constant vigilance and watching, watching, because there is a battle going on. My self-knowledge, my conviction in respect to self-knowledge, and this beginningless ignorance. So they are often able to win this battle and override one's ignorance, past tendencies. So therefore, there is an ongoing struggle between wisdom and ignorance, each of them prevailing alternatively. This is very nicely put, because in the beginning it feels that way. But what is the advantage of having got the jnana is that you just regroup. You just, finds again your balance, and then you bring forth your self-knowledge, and you tell Maya, no, you can't deceive me anymore, So, and then these tendencies, they tend to dissipate gradually, but steadily and surely. The jnani ranges himself on the side of wisdom and fights against ignorance until falsity is truly blown out and truth prevails. Therefore, jnana is invincible. Ooh, beautiful. Now I say, so if you are jnani, even an entry-level jnani, you know that the jnana is invincible. So just stay vigilant and fight back. How are you going to fight back? Just by saying, no, thank you, have been there, have done that. I'm not going to go to, to engage ignorance. In that way, the jnani is on the side of wisdom, because his clarity, his understanding is clear, and he's going to push back against ignorance until it loses momentum, and then falsity is truly blown out and truth prevail. Therefore, jnana is, I said invincible, indivisible. I read invincible. Jnana is invincible as well.
I was thinking, this is precisely why, for me, viveka is the highest of the spiritual values, and absolutely must become a discipline of mind, because then everything else follows from that. So, and it's just incredible how this sadhana chatushtayam is so concrete and so direct and covers everything.
Yeah.
I mean, really, when you look at the disciplines and how it all flows, it's just so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful, very effective, but not for everybody, as we know, because it requires a mind which is qualified or mature and developed to exercise that level of discrimination from moment to moment, to say no to ignorance again and again when it knocks at our door, and sometimes in a very seductive and deceiving way.
That is true.
Forgetfulness of the self never overtakes a middle class jnani. So now we are back to the middle class. The middle class is has made such a stand that he never forgets its true nature. So this ignorance does not apply to the middle class Jnani. And no mistaken knowledge. You remember last class he was talking about wrong knowledge. There are some wrong knowledge that cannot be correct because of one's identification with this or that piece of knowledge. So this wrong knowledge, which is a confusion between Satya and Mithya, or on a denser level between Dharma and the Dharma. So this wrong knowledge never possessed the mind of Jnani, of the middle class. So he lives a pure life, and he has his faculty of viveka at his disposal, at his hand, at all times. However, of his own accord, he brings out some predispositions from his own depth in order to maintain his body according to prarabdha. This is the conduct of an accomplished Jnani. This is a concept that I don't understand very well. I have difficult to elaborate or speculate this concept of a Jnani that is a strong self-knowledge. Self-ignorance does not overtake him, does not possess him. However, on his own accord, he brings out some vasanas, predisposition, from the depths of one's mind, subconscious mind, in order to maintain his body according to prarabdha. Sometimes in this text, it was said that he brings off some of these predispositions, in order to exhaust them as well. It was presented a concept like that in some previous chapters of this Tripura. So what we could say here, now it's popped in my mind. Do you want to comment about this, Lynn and Mark and Sylvia?
It could be that he practices yoga and he continues to do that after yama, or it could be that he likes a particular type of food and so he goes that way. Yeah, that's my feelings.
Yeah, I think so. When it's said that you transform your desires into preferences, and you can still fulfill. And as Mark said, the karma yoga aspect of it, to make the value of going into karma yoga rather than straight into sannyas for somebody is that you get to work through this stuff.
Yeah.
So you would continue to work through, right?
Yeah. Because he also says here, the author says that, however, of his own accord, he brings out some predisposition from his own depths in order to maintain his body. So, I mean, the body requires some maintenance, and it is some work. So you have to bath, you have to feed, you have to clothe. So one needs to make use of those kinds of vasanas. So he brings off, he keeps feeding on those predispositions in order to maintain his body according to prarabdha. So we could interpret it in different ways. So, but it's not absolutely important. The other twist to this, which was present in some other chapters on the Tripura, is that the Jnani somehow brings out some of those vasanas so that they are burnt because he is engaged in a total honesty or transparency or intellectual integrity that he wants. I mean, whatsoever is impure wanted to come out so that can be dissolved or melted in the light of consciousness and the light of self-knowledge. So that is another concept. So no, let it out, let it out. Okay. So I don't want anything hidden in the in the basement of my mind, so to speak. You understand? As for the aspirant, there is no forgetfulness of the self so long as he's engaged. Now he's calling the entry-level Jnani an aspirant. Okay. So as far as the aspirant, there is no forgetfulness of the self as long as he or she is engaged in practicing whatsoever sadhana, nididhyasana or samadhi yoga. So howsoever one does one's practice, or just shravana, manana, nididhyasana. Yeah? So one is engaged. And then within that engagement, there is no forgetfulness. But once those sadhanas are broken, are suspended, and then there is room for forgetfulness. Okay, so there's no forgetfulness, but I need to be really doing my sadhana. But the accomplished Jnani is always unforgetful of the self and picks out his own predispositions according to his own choice. Again, nice. He's bringing more this business of picking up one's vasanas. And now it seems that it's more on the lines of, okay, so I am the self, but I am still in this body and navigating in this world, and I need to, I know I'm the self, I don't need to do anything, I am a current, I have nothing to fulfill, but I have some prarabdha karma, I need to set the example to others as well, so let me pick up this and that predisposition so that I can fulfill my roles in society or something like that. The highest level of Jnanis makes no difference between samadhi and worldly transactions. He never finds anything apart from the self, so there is no lapse for him. So the aspirant needs to be totally involved in one's sadhana, in samadhi yoga or nididhyasana yoga. So he needs to be engaged doing that, so that he never forgets his nature as Brahman. So, but the highest Jnani never finds anything other than the self. There is no lapse of self-knowledge for him, even while transacting in the world. So, and then this Jnani does not need to take extra time to do shravana, manana, nididhyasana, or samadhi yoga, unless one's lifestyle and one's personal predispositions, makes him a Jnani, which is also a yogi. Samadhi yogi. The middle order Jnani is fond of samadhi and voluntarily abides in samadhi. There is accordingly a lapse, however slight, when he is engaged in worldly affairs or even in the maintenance of his body. So now it's very interesting. He makes a distinction here, talking about the middle class Jnani. He still loves to be engaged in shravana, manana, nididhyasana, and upasana, because that is where he abides fully in the certainty of self-knowledge. But, however, there is accordingly a lapse when he is engaged in worldly affairs or even in the maintenance of his body. So worldly affairs brings actions, activities, and but even if you say, no, I don't want to deal with the world anymore, I want to just to live outside of this world, but still I need to take care of one body, my body. So one still needs to cook and clean and bath the body and wash the dishes and whatnot. So even in the maintenance of his body, or even transacting with the world as a grihastha, there is a slight, but a very slight, but yet a small slap of self-knowledge once every time he's engaging in transacting with the world of affairs, and even transacting with himself for the sake of maintenance of his body. Interesting. So in the mind is something very incredible, because we have the ability to think without any deliberation. So the mind thinks by itself. Right? So involuntary thought is something that's all the time there. And then when we have to engage with the world, there will be more and more of those involuntary thoughts, or even stay home and take care of home, house, and the body. Those knowledge, those thoughts are going to be running. Yeah? So, and then we said, oh my God, this mind is thinking. So I just want to go and do my Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and Upasana. Yeah? So, because I want the mind not to think anymore. It goes on its own. Impressions are always there and will always be there. You understand? But the impressions should never create disturbance, or suffering. And that is possible to the extent that we have detached from that mind, those mental process that go on. We have detached from them, and so therefore we don't engage, we don't feed them, we don't give them attention, and they calm down. But impressions are all the times there. So we can for sure say that it's natural to have mental impressions, because our mental impressions produce the dream world we experience every night. You understand? They are involuntary impressions, thoughts that somehow manifest as the dream world. So the middle class Jnani is fond of one's sadhanas, because there he does not experience the mind, and its impressions. And there is no lapse of self-knowledge, however slight for the highest Jnani, but for the middle, there is a potential for some lapse. Therefore, he's really affectionate to his sadhanas. On the other hand, the Jnani of the highest order involuntarily and naturally abides in sahaja samadhi, natural samadhi, and any lapse of is impossible for him or her under any circumstance. So this is a perfect Jnani. And it's effortless. Involuntarily and naturally, his mind is totally pacified. The mind has merged into Aham Brahmasmi to a point that there is no room for any lapse which could bring about identification with the body, mind, and the world. These lapses are impossible under any circumstance, any wonderful, favorable circumstance and bad circumstance as well. The Jnani of the middle order or the highest order has no chain of karma left in him, because he is imperfection and does not perceive anything apart from the self, how can there be anything of karma left when the wildfire of jnana is raging, consuming all in its way? So we're going to stop here. And here we're talking, he's talking about the middle and the highest has burned one's karma because he is in perfection and does not perceive anything apart from the self. So the discussion is going about prarabdha is going to get more interesting in the next class. This coming Monday, okay, at the same time, Ishwara willing, of course. Anything else from you? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you. Goodbye. We meet again Monday. Namaste.
Thanks, Alinder. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.